In the vast collection of Robert Louis Stevenson's works, there is a specific kind of energy that comes from his historical adventures. While many of us know him for the dark, psychological duality of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, his earlier, more romantic historical fiction shows a different side of his genius. Today, we're looking at a story from his Swanston Edition that captures the high-stakes, often chaotic spirit of the Napoleonic era. This is the story of a man caught between the rigid laws of nations and the personal codes of honor that define a gentleman. The story begins in 1813, during the height of the Napoleonic Wars. Our protagonist is the Vicomte Anne de Saint-Yves, a French officer who finds himself a prisoner of war in Edinburgh Castle. Anne isn't a typical soldier. He's a man of wit, social grace, and a certain effortless charm that allows him to navigate the difficult circumstances of his captivity. He manages to win certain privileges from his captors, largely through his ability to move through different social circles with ease. It's during this time in Scotland that he meets Flora Gilchrist. She is a beautiful and spirited woman, and despite the fact that they are technically enemies on opposite sides of a global conflict, a deep romantic connection begins to form. However, the elegance of their courtship is quickly shattered by the brutal reality of the world they live in. A conflict arises between Anne and another prisoner, a man named Philippe Goguelat. Goguelat is a brutal, aggressive individual, and a situation develops where Anne is forced into a duel to defend Flora's honor. In the world of the early 19th century, a duel was a matter of social survival, but it was also a legal minefield. Anne wins the duel, but the outcome is far from celebratory. To the authorities, the death of Goguelat isn't seen as a matter of honor, but as a murder. Suddenly, the charming prisoner is a man with a target on his back, facing both the wrath of the law and the social stigma of his actions. As the tension in Edinburgh builds, a massive secret is revealed that changes the trajectory of Anne's life entirely. He learns that he is actually the rightful heir to a massive, wealthy English estate. He is the Count de Keroualle. This inheritance is tied to his cousin, Anne de Saint-Yves, who is revealed to be a spy. This revelation turns Anne from a mere prisoner of war into a man with a massive, contested fortune at stake. He is no longer just fighting for his reputation, he is fighting for his very identity and his future. With the law closing in and his cousin Elaine working to secure the inheritance for himself, Anne realizes he cannot stay in Scotland. He orchestrates a daring and terrifying escape from Edinburgh Castle. He descends a steep, treacherous cliff using nothing but a single rope, a moment of pure physical courage that marks his transition from a captive soldier to a hunted fugitive. From there, the story turns into a high-speed chase across the rugged landscapes of England. To evade detection, Anne adopts the alias Mr. Saint-Yves. He spends much of the narrative performing a role, constantly shifting his mannerisms and his speech to match whoever he is encountering. He has to navigate the English moors, which are as beautiful as they are dangerous. He faces a series of high-stakes encounters that test his ability to maintain his disguise. There is a tense standoff with a suspicious innkeeper, a skirmish with highwaymen, and a particularly nerve-wracking moment in Durham. In Durham, he is nearly exposed and must quickly perform the role of a patriotic Englishman to deflect suspicion. It's a constant game of social chess where one slip of the tongue could lead to a prison cell or a gallows. The journey is not just a physical one, it's a series of unpredictable shifts in fortune that reflect the romantic view of life itself. Just when things seem to be settling, or perhaps when they are at their most desperate, the story takes a surreal turn. In one of the most memorable sequences, Anne finds himself in a terrifying flight in a hot air balloon. It's a chaotic, almost dreamlike escape that ends in a dramatic sea rescue, highlighting how much of his survival depends on sheer chance and the unpredictable nature of technology and fate. Eventually, the path leads Anne to Paris, where the political landscape is in a state of constant upheaval. The final confrontation isn't fought with swords, but with legal maneuvering and social leverage. Anne's lawyer, a man named Mr. Romaine, proves to be a vital ally. Romaine is a master of the complex legalities of inheritance and espionage. He uncovers evidence of Elaine's treachery and uses it to blackmail him. Through this strategic maneuvering, Elaine is forced to renounce his claims to the Saint-Yves fortune, effectively clearing the way for Anne to claim his rightful place. With the legal battles won and his inheritance secured, the story moves toward its resolution. Anne returns to Scotland, the place where his journey began, to find the woman he loves. He and Flora Gilchrist are reunited, and they marry, finally settling into a life of stability and wealth as members of the landed gentry. It is the peaceful ending one might expect, but Stevenson leaves us with a subtle, lingering reminder. As the couple settles into their new life, the sounds of war begin to stir in the distance once again. The mobilization for new campaigns is beginning, suggesting that even in the most private moments of peace, the larger, uncontrollable movements of history are always waiting just beyond the horizon. When we look back at this story, several themes stand out that make it more than just a simple adventure. One of the most striking is the idea of identity as a performance. Throughout his journey, Anne survives not just because he is brave, but because he is a master of disguise. He can be a nobleman, a commoner, or a patriot, depending on what the moment requires. This suggests a view of social class as a kind of mask, something that can be put on or taken off to navigate the structures of society. It raises the question of where the performance ends and the true self begins. There is also a profound tension between the formal laws of the state and the informal codes of honor. The duel with Goguelat is the perfect example of this. In the eyes of the law, it was a crime. In the eyes of a gentleman, it was a necessity. This conflict drives much of the drama, forcing the characters to choose between being law-abiding citizens and being men of honor. It's a struggle that feels very much tied to the era, but it speaks to a universal human dilemma about which rules we should truly live by. The unpredictability of fortune is another thread that runs through the entire narrative. From the sudden discovery of a massive inheritance to the chaotic, almost absurd flight in a hot air balloon, Stevenson portrays life as a series of sudden, often violent shifts in status. Nothing is permanent, and a man can go from a prisoner in a castle to a wealthy count through a combination of luck, wit, and sheer desperation. This sense of volatility gives the story its driving energy, making the reader feel that the ground could shift beneath the character's feet at any moment. Finally, there is the shadow of war. The story is framed by the Napoleonic Wars, and while the personal drama of Anne and Flora is the heart of the book, the political reality of Europe is the engine that drives the plot. The war creates the prisoners, it creates the spies, and it creates the legal chaos that Anne must navigate. Even the ending, which offers a sense of personal resolution, is tempered by the realization that the cycle of conflict is never truly broken. Peace is a temporary state, a quiet interval between the movements of history. In the end, Stevenson's tale is a sweeping, romantic epic that manages to be both a thrilling adventure and a thoughtful look at the masks we wear. It's a story about a man trying to reclaim his dignity and his life in a world that is constantly trying to strip them away. Through Anne de Saint-Yves, we see a character who is as much a product of his era as he is a man of individual will, navigating a landscape where honor, law, and chance are constantly at odds.